Dad knew that the last few weeks this was totally true. And he loved his son, and he said, you know, I love you, and you're right, and we're going to fix that. Tomorrow is Saturday morning. We're going to get up, and we're going to spend the entire day together. The little boy goes to bed that night, totally excited. You know, it's going to be Dad Day tomorrow. The dad goes to bed that night a little earlier because he got to get up a little earlier because he still wants to spend that 15 to 20 minutes drinking his favorite cup of coffee and reading his favorite newspaper. The next morning, he gets up early, he's reading the paper, drinking his coffee, and he's not halfway through when the paper gets pulled down. The little boy says, Dad, I'm up! And the dad is astounded. He goes over there, and he's early. And he starts racking his brain real quick. Oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? I have to keep my word with my son. I sure wish I had another 10 or 15 minutes to finish the paper and this cup of coffee. What can I do? And he says, okay, first thing we're going to do, we're going to put a puzzle together. What had happened was a few pages earlier, he'd seen a picture of the world. So we grabbed that and tore it to pieces. We dropped it on the table. And we said, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put this puzzle together. Now, when you're done with that puzzle, we're going to go as far as you can. I'll help you when you need help. And then when we're done, we'll go outside. Well, little boy, you know, he's puzzled. Ha, ha, ha. But he says, okay, then I'll give it a try. Dad pops the paper back up, starts sipping his coffee, and congratulating himself because he really believes he's bought another, you know, maybe 15 minutes or so, and this is all the time that he needs, and then he'll help his son finish it, and they're going outside. About a few minutes later, the little boy pulls the paper down and says, Dad, I'm done. Dad is astounded, and with parental pride, he looks over, and sure enough, the puzzle is put together. He says, how did you do that? And the boy says, well, you know, it was tough. He says, I didn't know what to do, and I started fumbling with the paper, and I dropped one on the floor. And when I went to pick it up, you know, Dad, this is a glass top table. And when I looked up, I noticed that it appeared that there was a picture maybe of a man. So I went and grabbed some Scotch tape, and I flipped all the pages over, the pieces over, and I put the man together, and the world fell into place. Now, I heard that story when I was in high school. And from then on, for me, in my life, that has been a mantra. Put myself together, and the world falls into place. Put myself together, and my business falls into place. And one of the challenges we have is if you buy into that, if you believe that it all starts with you, the first challenge that you have is you wake up in the morning and you say, you know what, I want an amazing life. I want to know it all. I want to do it all. I want to have it all. The challenge that you have, of course, is that it's too much. There is no way, if you knew more than any other human being on the planet, that you can know it all. If you look at the graphic and you recognize that each of those three circles represents everything you could know or could have or could do, and then you see the red pie shapes, you realize that in your life, no matter how hard you try, the pie shape is going to ultimately represent what your life is. So we realize you may want to know it all, but you're not. And you may want to have it all, but you're not going to. And you may want to do it all, but you can't. And we realize then that our life is represented by the choices that we make. And that's the big challenge we have, is how to make choices. And that's really the subject of this book, The One Thing, that Jay and I wrote. And that is, how do you make the right choices such that by doing that, you get to live the biggest life you possibly could, personally and professionally. One of our associates has, business partners has on his wall, he has across from his desk, a sheet of paper that has the number 1440. And when you ask him, what does that mean? He says, well, it basically represents the number of minutes in a day. And it reminds me that the success of my day is directly determined how I use those minutes. And this makes sense to me, because what we understand is that time is the currency of achievement. And achievers make getting to the heart of things the heart of their approach. And essentially, this is the theme of the book, The One Thing, and that is going small. It's understanding that not everything matters equally, and you find the things that matter most, that extraordinary results are directly determined by how narrow you can make your focus. So it's almost counter to what you think, because people immediately say, well, I want a big life. I want a big marriage, or I want a big relationship with my family and friends. I want a big life physically and spiritually. But the way you get it is you go opposite. You go very, very small. You ignore all the things you could do, and you do what you should do. Big success really comes from doing the right thing, right? Well, we call that the domino effect. It's a simple idea, and that is, and so quickly just give you two different ways of thinking about this. Back in 2009 in the Netherlands, a company got together to conduct what they called they wanted to set the world record, or trying to have this domino run or domino fall in history. And they did it, and what they discovered was the number was close to 4.5 million dominoes. So you could literally take a standard-sized domino, and if you lined them up, you literally could knock over just under 4.5 million dominoes. Well, that's not the end of the story, though that's an amazing amount of things to accomplish just by accomplishing one thing. The other side is, how much energy does that generate? Well, the answer was 94,000 joules of energy. Well, that didn't mean a whole lot to me, so I asked my research staff, I said, well, how much energy is that? And they said, well, actually, Gary, that's 545 consecutive push-ups. Well, that means that all of a sudden resonates with me, because that's a lot of energy. So here's what we know. If you line things up, and you line them up such that by hitting the first one or accomplishing the first one, everything else becomes easier or automatically happens, it generates an amazing amount of energy that accomplishes a lot. Now, there's a second study that was done. It was actually done back in the 1980s. And what happened was, they did a study, and the study basically asked the question, if I took a standard-sized domino and I lined things up, does it have to knock over the same size, or could we actually knock over something bigger? Well, the answer is you can. The research said that a domino of any size can knock over 1.5 times its size if it's lined up properly. So I asked our staff, I said, okay, well, explain to me then. First thing I wanted to know was, how many dominoes is it going to take to knock over Peyton Manning? Because Peyton Manning is not a quarterback that I root for, because they always beat all the teams that I cared about. So how do we knock over Peyton Manning? And they came back and they said, well, it's going to take 10 seconds. On this domino, you're going to knock over Peyton. I said, awesome. Now, here's the question. Take it out further. And what you see on your graphic is that at the 18th domino, that 18th domino is the size of the Leaning Tower. By the way, at the 23rd domino, you're the size of the Eiffel Tower. At the 31st domino, you are knocking over Mount Everest. And at the 57th domino, you are almost to the moon. Now, I want you to think about the enormity of that. In other words, you started out with a single domino, a single normal-sized domino, and by the 57th, that domino is almost touching the moon. So the implications for you and I, in my mind, is real simple. And that is, extraordinary success is sequential. It's not simultaneous. If you're seeking extraordinary success in your life, and I mean physically, spiritually, personally, professionally, financially, in any area, and I know this sounds like a massive oversimplification. And you know what? It is. I am oversimplifying it, because extraordinary success is simpler than most people think. Now, I've had a lot of people pontificate to me about the oversimplification of this. And I just back up a little bit, and I get real quiet, and I listen to it. And I don't mean to be offensive, but usually these are not extraordinarily successful people that are challenging me. In fact, I've never had anybody who would absolutely have extraordinary success in any area. I mean extraordinary success. I mean extraordinary success. You know, earlier when they talked about my career, you got to look. This isn't where Gary Keller takes 5 minutes and runs a personal commercial. But you got to realize that when I got out of college with a degree in real estate, I sold 6 houses my first 30 days in a city I've never been in. Runner-up for the Rookie of the Year my first year in the real estate business. By 26, the vice president of the largest real estate company in Austin, Texas. By the time I'm 29, I own and operate the largest real estate company in Austin. when I'm 30, we sell more real estate. And I'm 56 years old, so I've been number one in my city for how long? 27 years. 27 years. I've been number one in my city. By the way, today, I now head up the largest real estate sales organization in the United States. Okay, so I'll stop there. But my point is simply that I've achieved extraordinary success in my career.
And it's, I mean, Gary, I'll just step in and add, I mean, you say it's sequential. You've essentially been doing the same fundamental thing since the very beginning.
Absolutely.
And you've been adding to it a little bit at a time. And this idea of a geometric progression, you had this domino run that started 27 years ago, and you just kept getting a little bit better and a little bit better. And I look at that 1,440 minutes, I would probably argue that you don't spend all of those minutes better than everyone else. You take a tiny fraction of that time. You don't have to be focused all day. Well, you just do it a little harder and a little longer.
Yeah, so here's the point. Thank you for bringing this up, Jay. The point is that success is not about being extraordinary all day. I'm a doofus. You hang out with me a lot, you'll yeah. No, I mean that. At the end of the day, it's not about being extraordinary at everything. It's about figuring out what the fulcrum point is, what's the lever point, what's the thing you can do that if you did that, everything else becomes easier and unnecessary. So the truth of the matter is I didn't try to be perfect. I don't try to be great at everything. I just asked the question, what is the thing that will get me there more than anything else? And I give that more time than anything else. Right? We'll get to that in a second.
Right. And over time, big results show up.
That's exactly right. Well, when we wrote the book, Jay and I sit down with our publisher and we said, look, we presented a manuscript. The publisher said, well, you need to get right into now. Tell them what you want to tell them. And Jay and I went, no, we're not going to do that. And he goes, why not? We said, well, because basically it's like putting good wine in an old flask. The problem we have here is that people have too many lies that are in their head that keeps them from having any room to accept the truth. So first off, we're going to talk about the lies. And in the book, we lay out 6 lies that I just want to quickly go through. The first one is that everything matters equally. It doesn't. This just absolutely isn't true. What happens to people, let me just kind of lay these lies out for you. What happens is people wake up in the morning, we all do, and we say, look, I want to try to do it all. Everything matters equally. What happens is it doesn't matter equally. And shortly you discover you can't do it all anyway. So then the next thing we do is we try to combine them. We call it multitasking. We say, well, you know what? Since I can't do everything, I'm going to start trying to do multiple things at the same time so I can try to get everything done. What happens is these lies start building on each other, either consciously or subconsciously. And then we back up and we say, you know what? Obviously, neither of these approaches is working. I just need more self-discipline. Well, actually, that's not accurate either. And there's no such thing as a disciplined person. And when that fails somebody, they then say, you know what? I just need more willpower. That's my problem. Well, okay, that's a whole other rabbit hole to fall down into, and that's not going to work the way most people approach it, because they perceive that willpower is a character issue. It creates a massive problem for them when they try to approach it that way. And then, by the way, after these 4 lies have failed them, they then just work. And they put in long hours and think, well, I'm just going to make it up in time. Time isn't the answer. What happens is people get completely out of whack as a result of that. And they start walking around. You read about it all the time. People say, I need more balance. I need more balance. And you immediately realize what they're doing is you're trying to use time as the lever. That's not going to work. That lie is going to absolutely take you down a horrible path. And then the last thing is they throw up their hands in frustration and say, you know what? Trying to lead a big life is bad. I'm not going to do it anymore because it just doesn't work. I'm going to be happy with the little life, the little relationships, all the little things. I'm just going to be happy with that, and they give up. And these are the lies. Well, the first one, if we go back real quick, is everything matters equally, and the truth is it doesn't. There's a simple little phrase called the 80-20 principle. Most people, when you say that, they gloss over. And again, I've heard all the critiques when I bring this up. Oh, I heard that before. And I look at them and I go, yeah, but do you live by it? So the biggest challenge is Pareto's principle is not an old wives' tale. It's not something that someone made up. It's not a philosophy. It's not a concept. I always say it's as grave as gravity itself. When I'm teaching, I talk to people, I say, look,
Don't you trust gravity? Haven't you built your entire life on the absolute belief that gravity is real? And you certainly don't go around every day defying it, do you? People go, well, no, of course not. Okay, well, here's the biggest challenge you have, and that is accepting additional principles sight unseen. Because you can't see gravity, but you can see the results of it. By the way, you can't see the 80-20 principle, but you can see the results of it. There's an individual, the reason it's called the Pareto principle is essentially because there was an individual who made it their life's work to study this. And here's all it says. It says essentially that you can do 20% of what you might do, and it will generate 80% of the results that you want. In other words, the minority of your effort is going to lead to the majority of your results, right? Well, the one thing we talk about that most people work off of to-do lists. In other words, they make a gigantic list, which is important, right? I mean, and there are books written around making lists, right, Jay?
Oh yeah, whole list. I mean, whole books dedicated to the wonderful to-do list.
Yeah.
But it carries you. It's a list of everything that you haven't done, and it has no inherent priority to it.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, to be honest with you, I don't really worry about my to-do list. I ask a different question. And what I've observed with extraordinary achievers is the question they ask is, what's the thing I have to do? Not all the things I could do. What's the thing that if it doesn't get done, the wheels are going to fall off the bus? And they give that the amount of time that it deserves. And in the book, we simply call this extreme Pareto. In other words, if you take the 20% of the 20% of the 20%, you're going to end up with 1. And so we're simply suggesting that you absolutely work from a clear sense of priority. And Jay and I, we spent an entire day in this room one day arguing over the word priority. It comes from a Latin word priority, and that means first. It means first. And so I looked at Jay and I said, well, how can you have what's called priorities? If the root word means first, then what would priorities mean? First?
And it's a little awkward.
Well, ultimately, Jay talked me down off the route because I really was fixing to change the nature of the book and start arguing. And Jay said, look, priority has been hijacked here. It now means the things that matter. And that's the way people use the word today. But I would only point out to those of you listening, and that is, well, let's go back and look at what words are supposed to mean. If priority means first, things that matter most, the thing that matters most, then you can't have things that matter most in the same way.
The way I interpret this, Gary, is you can only have one priority at any given time. At this moment, based on what you're trying to do, you have one priority, period.
Yeah, so there you go. So the point of this book is, or the whole principle is, you can only do one thing at a time. And the question is, because a lot of people say, how can you only do one thing? And Jane, I immediately go, if you can find the word only in the book, call us and let us know. Because you won't find it. We never wrote it because it's not there. We never said only one thing. We said one thing at a time. And make sure that what you do at any moment, when it matters, when results matter, is the right thing. And that's all you're trying to say. Well, the second lie is the idea of multitasking. And multitasking is one of the biggest lies out there. How many websites did we do? I can't remember.
Every time we Googled how to multitask, the number got bigger and bigger. And the last time I checked, it was like 36 billion pages dedicated to helping people do what's impossible better.
Well, really, in other words, it's entered in the mainstream. And it's not even a real word in the sense of what people think it means, right?
Now, when it originally came out of computers, it really meant one resource, that was being shared by multiple tasks, and it would alternate. Even computers alternate, and that's really, we'll talk about it, how we work. But the idea that it was doing two things at once was an illusion.
Yeah, it was multitasking was meant to originally mean multiple tasks alternately sharing one resource, which was the computer. And what happened was over time it got hijacked and flipped, and it started referring to multiple tasks being done simultaneously by one resource, meaning a person, which, by the way, is a lie. And the thing about it is that it's a big, big lie that people fall prey to. Well, the big study, again, you can go to our website, theonething.com, and at it, we've put in all the research that we did. But in the book, we thought were the absolute essential pieces that made the best case for what we're trying to say. The research is way beyond the book, and you go to the website and get it. But in the summer of 2009, Clifford Nass, who was a Stanford professor, he set out to answer the question. His mission was to find out how well so-called multitaskers could multitask. What he said was he was sure they had some secret ability, but it turns out that high multitaskers were suckers for irrelevancy. And what he did was he took a group of individuals, he asked them what they did best, and then had them define themselves into whether they were a multitasker or not. And then he found a way to measure their effectiveness. What did he find out?
He gave them a battery of tests, and what happened is that the low multitaskers, I put in air quotes, outperformed the high multitaskers on every single one. And the shocking thing is,
how many?
Every
one of them,
including multitasking.
Yeah. And again, my challenge is that when you hear this information, don't just gloss over it. Sit back and go, wow. That's a wow. That means stop that.
And stop bragging about it.
Yeah, stop bragging about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what really happens?
Well, what really happens is that we start. And so what happens when you multitask is you have what you would consider to be interrupted workflow. You're doing something, you reorient, you switch, reorient to something else. You do that, and you switch, reorient, and go back to what you're doing. And it takes a long time, which is why multitaskers think things take longer than they really do.
The decision to switch tasks, like I'm folding clothes, I'm watching TV, is instantaneous. It's the rules.
Yeah.
Your brain has to switch to what are the rules of what I'm doing to what are the rules I'm going to, and people lose time without realizing it.
Yeah. So what happens is we have to separate the line. When we do two things, when we think you go two ones, that's actually not really happening. And again, we don't have time today to go into and loose ends pile up. In fact, there are tons of YouTube videos now where I was watching one the other day where someone said there was this guy told his family, I mean, he claimed he was, right? So they gave him a series of tests with a car and asking him questions through a headset while he was driving. Oh, he's horrible.
Well, the hard stats behind these three is that researchers will tell you if you're multitasking at work, you're going to lose 20% of your time. A quarter of your time gets wasted. It costs you effectiveness. We know that if you are multitasking while you're taking an IQ test, your IQ will drop by 10 points. That's more than it would drop if you were smoking dope while you took it. And the last one, loose ends pile up. When you move away from something, you often don't ever get back to it, and that's stressful.
Yeah, I love the statement, multitasking is merely the opportunity to screw up more than one thing at a time. That's what makes it alive. Well, the third one is, okay, so if I can't do everything, and I can't combine them to try to get everything done, then maybe discipline is my answer. Well, it's a lie. It's a lie because of the way we think of discipline. If you went to the definition of discipline and looked it up, it would basically be training yourself to act in a specific way, essentially.
I had a fellow show up in Nashville an hour before my seminar, and I asked him, hey, wow, you're the early bird, what's that about? And he goes, well, I can't help it. It's a habit. He was a Green Beret, and he explained to me, for 4 years, I was trained, disciplined, to show up early and observe before I act. And so that's how I remember. I think of a disciplined soldier. They've had habits trained into them. That's what discipline means. That's what it means.
And the biggest problem is that they work, because I teach the kids at Baylor University, when I teach them, I'll ask them, I said, tell me what the word discipline means to you. Invariably, Jay, at least half of my kids at some point will insert the word punishment as part of their framework of reference for using discipline the way the word means, and that is, hey, kid, eat your pee. Get this note says, well, let me educate you on why you should. Let me demonstrate how you should. Let me show you how that works. Here comes a little birdie, And they do all the things to try to train them and bring coaching and consulting and mentoring and educating to get them to speed. when the kid doesn't, the parent finally says, eat your pizza, there's going to be severe consequences. Did you eat something to these? Parent looks up and says, wow, that was fast and easy. And before we know it, we have a pattern formed, and that is consequences that could take the form of a punishment at some point becomes the placeholder for discipline. The reality is, to act in a specific way. Training, coaching, consulting. If you don't naturally do something regularly and you want to do that, the answer is go get discipline, right? Go hire a coach, go find a trainer, go get information, and then over time, habit takes over, which is where something you've stayed with long enough now becomes a part of you and works for you.
Right. And then the paradigm of the wise, if you understand that everything doesn't matter equally, that there is one thing that matters most, you would identify it, you wouldn't multitask, you try to get it in the habit with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the actual point here is, and we're building an argument that essentially says, look, what you need to do is narrow down what you're trying to get done and then build a habit around getting it done. That's the argument here. And again, if we had a couple hours, we'd really explore all the different ways in your life this could happen. Well, the thing that we constantly task our research team with debunking myths and ideas. And one of the big lies out there is it takes 21 days to form a habit. I had someone flip me a note in one seminar where they said, I think it actually came from the health industry where they would only pay for 21 days of medication before they cut them off.
Therapy stuff.
Yeah. So they better have formed the habit in 21 days. The research is real clear. The definitive research on forming habits says, look, it came out of I think it came out of University College of London, Jay, I think back in 2009. I'm not sure if I think so.
That's correct, in Australia.
Yeah, and what they did was, and they used weight and exercise as because these were measurable.
Right, they asked a large group of students to take on a new health habit. It could be anything from drinking more water, to going to the gym every day, to hard stuff like quitting smoking. And they asked them 2 questions every day. Did you do it, yes or no, and how hard was it? And what they discovered,
well, here's what they found out, was it took, on the low end, 18 days, and on the high end, 254 days. Right? That's what they discovered. Yes, the average was 66, right? But I have to try this point home. Everybody's unique. It isn't 21 for dang sure, and the reality is, it's not even 66 necessarily. It's 18 to 254. It could be 265 for you. You may have to bring discipline to your life for 254 days before that becomes a habit. And depending on who you are, it could take longer. You're going to have to stick with it.
Here's what we know. If you are willing to work for your habit, the habit will then work for you. Now doing the right thing is a habit.
That's it. Well, the fourth line then becomes, well, discipline didn't work the way I thought of it, so I just need more willpower. Well, here's the problem with this. Willpower is not what most people think, is it?
No, I think we get it all wrong. Willpower is the will to say yes to what you need to do and no to everything else. So if you're on a diet, it's yes to the carrot stick, no to the chocolate cake. Both of those require brain energy or willpower. And this is where we all screwed up. It's the same.
Well, people think it's the same, where there's a will, there's a way. Seems to refer to character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though the statement is correct, the way it's purposed is to me, is kind of a mess up.
Well, the big problem with that for me is when people then fail, they make it a character issue about themselves, and they beat themselves up, which is just totally wrong.
Yeah. Well, here's something that the research is really clear about, and that is that willpower is as much about timing as it is anything. Right.
Right.
What the research says is that willpower is a renewable energy. Right. That your brain is 1/5 of your body mass, it's 1/5 of your energy that it consumes. Right. So it has to look at that like. And here's the reality: is if you think of willpower like your cell phone, you're in the right zone, because there isn't any question anyone listening to us today takes their cell phone and looks at their battery life several times a day.
In this industry, you're right. Everybody, they're always aware of how much battery life they have.
I think everybody actually in this industry. I mean, here's what they definitely know. They're going to plug it in once, if not twice a day, to make sure they always have enough battery life. If you use willpower that way, you are absolutely on the right path. Well, the best study that we actually choose to game two here because they were so amazing. The first one was they took a group, divided them into two, and they said, look, this half of the room you're going to memorize 2 numbers, and on the other half you're going to memorize 7 numbers. And when you're done memorizing, it's all right, thank you for you. You're going to walk out, and once you pick up a healthy snack, and then go down, pick up a snack, excuse me, and then go down and repeat the number. And even if you're not hungry, go ahead and choose a snack, right? And by the way, they really didn't care about you memorizing a number. What they cared about is what snack that you chose after you could then have to either memorize 2 digits or 7 digits. And what happened? Well, it just shows how fragile your willpower is. The people who memorized 7 digits, and by the way, everybody got it right, they were 50% more likely to choose an unhealthy snack. That little bit, 5 extra numbers, undid their willpower, and they made a poorer decision. So here's what the research says about willpower, and that is when you wake up in the morning, it doesn't matter what time you wake up, Jay, your brain starts operating. And when your brain is operating, it literally starts consuming energy, which reduces your willpower. So even if you wake up in the morning and do mundane little things, it's still using up willpower and taking it away from when you need to use it the most. And you know that because if you worked a 12-hour day and came home starved, you open up the refrigerator, anything in it that is edible is fair game at that moment. Every diet is totally ruined. I always laugh and say at family reunions, after I've gone to our annual convention for Keller Williams, at the end of it, on that night, the night before, because I'm done basically, right? The night before the last day, my wife and I will go to dinner, you know, or may have room service or whatever. They will bring the cheesecake, and I will eat it. Right. And if my wife has any, I will start eating hers. She'll have to stop. And if there's candy in the room, I will start eating it. Now, you know me, Jay. Do I eat cheesecake a lot? No, I hope not. But when your willpower is used up, you fall back on your game. Yeah. And everybody is. That's exactly right. No, by the way, your activities that would drive your career are at risk when you choose to do them unwittingly when your willpower is low. And that's what completely ruins us. Well, the other amazing statistic or study was done on the Israeli parole system, which is done. They took a whole year parole hearing, and the way it works is they looked at the parole judges. Every day they had to make about 35 judgments over the course of the day, and they had 3 periods. And that's what you all are seeing by experience. In the morning period, they would go for about 2 hours, making a decision about every 6 minutes or so. They'd have a small break where they'd get kind of a late breakfast. They'd go for another period. They'd have a late lunch, they'd go again. And what you see here is the impact of their nutrition on their decision making. In the very opening of every period, the parolees had about a 60-65% chance of going home. And after that, it fell all the way to 0 just in every single one, which tells us it doesn't mean you make bad decisions, you make default decisions. The judge's default decision was go back to jail. Yeah, I need to use the bathroom. You know, we've been hearing this, and I didn't use the bathroom before, or I'm hungry, or I need to go make a quick call, or whatever. I mean, it's actually, it sounds. What I say is this, is when I look at it, if there was one period of your day that you could make the best decisions about how to manage your willpower, it would be in the morning, and it's very clear to me. You know what this looks like to me? We could play this slide and call this the production graph of real estate agents. Right now, we would take all of the mega agents, the real estate agents that are generating massive amount of productivity, and they would be the ones who choose to generate at the 65% willpower mark. Right. Yeah. And oh, by the way, all the lowest producers in the industry would choose to do their lead generation at the time of day where their willpower and default judgment was down at the bottom. Right. Which means they're distractible. They may not think good. They may not do it at all. Right. Basically, this is a productivity graph for any profession or anything that you want to do. You better do it when you have willpower. And that's the bottom line about it. Well, the fifth line is none of this works, so we then turn around because of the way we approach it. So then we say, you know what, I need more balance. I'm out of balance because I'm spending too much time at work. Well, the way that I look on there's a real simple thing, and that is I think balance itself is a misconception. There's an idea in physics called quantum jitter-sided dance. It basically means that nothing stands still, that the foundational level of energy is not zero. It's above zero. Everything's moving. The idea of balance is really not, it's not accurate the way people perceive it. It's actually counterbalancing. It's always moving back and forth to create ultimately the average of balance. And the question is only how long you can stay out of balance. Not are you going to be out of balance. It's how long are you going to stay there. Don't walk around and tell me I need more balance. No. The issue is, are we talking about work or are we talking about personal life? If we're talking about work, I want you to absolutely go out of balance and stay there every day.
That's what it looks like to build a habit around your one thing. You're spending a lot of time doing one thing, and things are being unattended. It doesn't feel balanced when you're doing the right thing at work.
That's right. So we're going to have a lot of undone things at work. I have employees come up to me, how's that possible? My job description says I have to do 20 things. I say, well, here's your mistake. Line them all up based on priority. Start with the question and say, well, what needs to be done the least? And get to the place where it's what's the thing that didn't get done, I'd lose my job. Now, here's the point. The men and women who progress in life narrow down to that thing, and they do that so well that even though they're not getting the other things done, instead of getting fired for not doing all 20, they get their salary doubled, they get called the head of the department of doing that one thing, and they get an assistant who does the other 19. And that's what happens. That's why average people always complaining when they hang out with above average people, because above average people never try to do everything. And then the below average people are always complaining about why there's always messes around them.
Yeah, there's 19 things that you didn't do.
Exactly. Now, in your personal life, you got a big challenge here, and that is that you cannot stay out of balance very long. I know for me, and we've talked about this a lot. I know for me, it's on a daily basis as it regards to physicality and all that.
We lost our screen there.
Yeah, it's okay. Mel's working on it.
All right, that's okay. We can talk without screens. We don't need
Okay.
So we're back, but that's...
Mel will get it onto the right slide.
Awesome, then we're going to keep going. So the interesting thing about balance is that in your personal life, in terms of physicality, for me, I have to exercise every day. I have to eat properly every day. I can't go a week even of not exercising or eating properly before my body, and this is just me personally, really starts to fall apart, Jay. With my family, I want to see them every day. I want to talk to them every day. My son, who is 22 in a month, he goes, God, why do you always want to talk to me? And I go, well, because, I love you and I want to talk to you. So, well, I have my other friends, their parents don't know where they are and they don't know what you know. And then we go, well, I want to know where you are and I want to know what's going on and I'm going to bug you and you're going to miss that someday. So, shut up. But my point is, in your personal life, your spiritual life, your physical life, you're going to move back and forth. You're going to spend an hour with a kid, and if you have two kids, then you're going to spend an hour with the other kid. Or you're going to spend one day with one kid and one day with the next kid. But you're not going to turn to one kid and say, hey, I'm going to spend 1 month with you, and then the next month I'm going to spend it with your brother. Right. That won't work.
You've got to do tight counterbalancing. You've got to attend to them all. You've got to be a lot more attentive there. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. We love this quote from James Patterson. He says, imagine life as a game in which you're juggling 5 balls. Balls are called work, family, health, friends, and integrity. If you keep all of them in the air, one day you finally come to understand that work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it bounces back. The other 4 balls, family, health, friends, integrity, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, it will irrevocably be irrevocably scuffed, nicked, perhaps even shattered.
That's the tough truth, right?
Yeah. Well, the last big lie then is almost a defeat. It's almost succumbing and saying, well then, trying to lead a big life is bad. It's almost like megaphobia, right?
It's a made-up word for us, but it's an irrational fear of big. There's no basis in reality.
The overhead that I always put on the screen when I'm teaching my students at Baylor, Jay, is I put this up there. And I say, let me ask you a question. I say, there's this idea that dates back to the military called span of control. Basically means that you can effectively oversee a system of people. And then beyond that number, they're not going to be as effective. And the number has ranged, research-wise, from 3 to 7, 8, in that range. The sweet spot has been generally accepted to be 5. Okay? So I put this graphic up there and I say, okay, given that premise, that the sweet spot for effectively overseeing is 5 people, tell me the difference between a company of 5 employees and a company of 80,000 people.
Well, from the perspective of the leader, if you're using a big model of leadership with this is, it should be no different at all.
The amount of people that report to you is no different. And that's why I always walk around and people say, wow, your life will be really busy and you're overwhelmed with responsibilities because you're the chairman of a company or you're the former CEO of the company, blah, 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 and it has all these people. And I always look at them and go, no, you're wrong. It's actually, yeah, there's a lot of complexity beneath me, and if anything goes wrong or falls apart, and I don't have layers of management or responsible, accountable individuals to take care of it, oh yeah, it can roll all the way to me. But the reality is, no, on a day-to-day basis, my life is no more complex than anyone else's. Once I got to 5 people reporting to PJ, my life never got more complex.
If you get the right 5 people in that box, it can get as big as possible, right? As big as you can imagine it.
Well, that's from an organizational standpoint, that's exactly right. Well, here's the problem with things small, and that is it leads to small actions, it leads to small habits, it leads to small relationships. You know, as a parent with 2 small children, don't you? You're very concerned about your kids imagining too small of a life right now. I mean, one of the things that you and Wendy do, and I know you're amazing parents, is you're imagining a big life for your kids. You're trying to put them into environments, into relationships where they think bigger about themselves, they think bigger about what their opportunities are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We want to encourage them to think as big as possible because we know when they're willing to think big, they can adopt bigger models like plan of control and bigger relationships.
Yeah.
I think, Gary, this is our break time.
Okay, great.
So we can now turn it over and let people have a couple-minute break before we finish up.
Okay, great.
Okay. Thank you guys. 1 minute break, actually. Next slide, Mel.
Uploads.com has social impact on special today. Whoa,
Ooh, the slides are
so
done.
special. See, this
You get the slides back up, Mel. I'll let people know. Social Impact, we have 15% off today, and for the first 10 people who purchase Social Impact, they will get a free copy of Gary and Jay's book. Next, let you know this webinar may go about 10 minutes over, and then after that we have Joe Sesso, who's going to be talking about 3 steps to avoiding a social media disaster. Great information, and it will teach you why you probably need social impact. And right now we are going to give away a free signed copy of The One Thing. So, Mel, drum roll please. Alright, and we have Tracy Butler. Welcome and congratulations, Tracy. Please let us know what your snail mail address is and we will send that copy to you.
Coming up next month, Gary White. Go to secretswebinars.com to sign up, and you can also sign up for Katie Lance coming up in October, so you'll be set with reminders for the next 2 months.
And it's back to Gary and Jay.
Thanks, guys. All right,
Sure.
so I'm waiting for the controls back to me.
Okay.
I like looking at my face.
I saw the mouse moving, so I think you have control. Click on it again. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay,
Sure.
so let's in the interest of time, if we'd actually wanted to, when we were going through the lines, Jay and I could have easily started just, and you could tell us almost trying to do it, interject what we're really trying to get to, which is essentially the truth. And then the truth of it is that big success comes by focusing on what matters most. And I know that sounds simple, but what's not simple is living your life that way. Well, the way this all came about for me was in working with people, trying to help them. And I've spent literally my entire professional career on this issue of helping others. I finally discovered that I needed to narrow what they were going to do, because otherwise they would try to do too much. So ultimately, at the end of a meeting or a conversation, I would say, well, now, do you know what to do? Yeah, okay, go do it. Later I would say, now, do you know what your priorities are? There you go, using that word like blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, I got down to this, finally out of frustration, because people weren't moving to the height that I believed they could. I really just stopped asking anything other than this. I said, out of frustration, I said, look, if you could just do one thing this week, such that by doing it, everything else you've got on your list was either easier or not even necessary to do, what would that be? Well, when you ask it that way, everybody would give you the right answer. I mean, they would give you the appropriate answer, and I'd go, okay, great, well, just do that. When we get on the phone next week, or we're going to be in person next week, that's all we're going to talk about. Unless you've really nailed it, then we'll talk about other things. Well, guess what, Jay? Productivity went through the roof. Well, you explain this to me. When you only have something on your list of to-dos, there's nowhere to hide. You can't say, but I did this instead. And that's what people do. They hide behind all the other things that they were doing, trying to stick a flag victory and all that, and it doesn't work. Well, to break this down, the question is a simple question. It says, what's the one thing I can do? Not the one thing I should do, and not what are the things it's what's the one thing I can do, not should do, would do, want to do, thought of doing, told to do, might do, someday will think about doing. So it's what's the one thing I can do. And then there's a qualifier such that by doing it, in other words, something's going to happen as a result of doing this one thing. And that's going to be that everything else that you could do would be easier or even unnecessary. And what I don't unnecessary is because if you have a lot of experience with creating plans and taking action on them, you discover is once you take one step out the front door to implement the plan, all the other steps change. Right? To some degree they change, because the world never operates in a perfect fashion. So step 2, step 3, step 4 always looks slightly different when we go out to live our life in the world of achievement. Okay? And that's the reason why you say what you're going to discover is really figure out what you should be doing first and get it done, recognizing that everything else after that, if you do that is the right thing and you nail it, it's going to be easier, or you may find out the rest of that stuff wasn't even as necessary.
You're looking for the longest domino run you have in your life. If I give you one thing, what will knock over the most dominoes that get me towards my objective? It's just the biggest lever out there. I hear you asking that all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's why we call it the book. We called it that because we wanted everyone. We asked ourselves this question. The title was actually the Success Act. That was the working title. And in writing the book, we kept asking ourselves, well, what's the one thing we want the reader to walk away from the book with? And we decided it was,
what's my one thing?
Yeah, that's it. And then we looked up and said, well, then, in the spirit of really doing the right thing in writing this book, we're going to change the title. Because it really is the success habit. The ability to narrow down what you could do to what you should do, and then giving it the appropriate time, is the secret of a big life. So doing less, but doing the right thing, and giving it more time than anything else, is the secret to actually getting everything you actually wanted. And it's an amazing thing. I've lived it at so many levels of my life. I'm astounded at the simplicity of it. It's a force of nature.
It's the truth. That's why we called it the section of the truth.
It is the truth. Well, when you look at your life, you realize you have all these buckets. You have your spiritual life, your physical health, personal life, key relationships, your job, business, and your finances. Well, we put spiritual life at the top. Our publisher kind of argued that when his job was there. But our argument was, well, if you looked at all of these and you line them up based on priority, what would be the priority that matters more than all the others?
If you don't have that foundation, nothing else really matters.
Exactly right. It's focusing in on what matters most in life itself, and the priority should be your relationship with the universe, with the stratosphere, with the galaxy, right? It's with God. It's it's that journey, and that's a critical journey to resolve those issues, to give yourself some sort of a centered perspective on why you're here and what an amazing life while you're alive would look like.
So what we're saying is, in that area of your life, we want you to ask the question this way: what's the one thing I can do in my spiritual life such that everything else will be unnecessary? Start there, right? If you don't have that working, why would you move on to the next thing?
And I'll tell you, the answer for me is love. And it's coming from a place of love and coming from a place of gratefulness. So a loving and grateful spirit is my one thing. And then, by the way, the one thing that I do to get me started each day is, and Jack doesn't bring out of bed. I literally, when the alarm goes off, I always set it 10 minutes before I want to wake up. So what happens is, when the alarm goes off, I hit it, and then between that and the 10 minutes before it goes off again is my spiritual moment. And I don't even get out of bed. My view is that before you start the day, make it the one thing you do every day for the rest of your life. And so I immediately go through it. I thank God. I thank the universe for Jay Papa. I thank the universe for my wife, my family, my friends, my business partners. I literally go through and am grateful and thankful and ask the question, how can I lead my life and demonstrate this I feel for this day? That's what I do. And that's my one thing. And that's how I make it happen. Just as a demonstration.
And as a result of that, you have wonderful spiritual energy going around and people see that. So boom, you've got that taken care of. I don't think we have to go through all of them, but on your physical health, you would ask the same question.
Yeah.
I think as you say it, if you don't take care of your body, where are you going to live, right? Absolutely. Who's going to do the rest of the stuff?
Well, this houses your spiritual body while you're alive on this planet. So it becomes the next domino. By the way, you see a lot of people cheat, Jay, and they go straight from, they skip physical, they cheat on personal, they screw up on their few relationships, they go straight to their job. And their job is their one thing. And they let their job define them. They let it define the way they view themselves. They let it define what gets the most amount of time in their life. They let everything, that becomes the center of their world. And, it's not that there's anything wrong with it, but the reality is life is bigger than that. And until you realign the priorities, such that spiritual and physical, they line up like this, you never see the magnitude of life. Even the people that have the biggest life possible, who have violated this, I will assure you, if they realign, their life will get bigger.
And if they don't, they're on the path to regret. One day they're going to wake up and go, wow, I got my priorities out of whack.
Well, here's what happens. If we talk about, let's just go back to the rest of the time talking about work. And that is building an amazing career, an amazing business, and an amazing financial life. And in that context, here's what we know. That what most people do is they give their one thing, the thing that drives their sales career, let's say it's real estate, they give that a little slice of time. And what they don't realize is that people that have the biggest life real estate agents that do a massive amount of business, right? I just got on the phone with a gentleman who's already this year closed over 300 units, over almost 117 million in real estate volume this year already. That's live. So you can imagine what he's on track for. By the way, he was a living one thing. He was so narrow. You were on the call. He was narrow. He was focused. He gives an inordinate amount of time.
They have one kind of client, and that's the only client they serve. I mean, as narrow as it gets. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So what we want you to have is a productive day. But by the way, that's going to mean that you're going to say no to a lot of things, because you're going to only have, right? In other words, you're going to start your day, and at some moment you're going to literally wake up and you're going to say, now I have to turn to my one thing. While I still have willpower, while I have energy, and I'm going to lock the world out. I'm going to do this. What's going to happen is that you're going to spend 3 to 4 hours doing that. And the research is real clear on that. Go back to that, it's been reported by numerous different news sources and authors, for the last 5 or 6 years. But it is considered the foundational understanding of how you master something, how you get to elite performance level.
The 10,000 hour rule, and that's how you accrue it.
Yeah.
Big block of time.
that you and I always just called in the last decade time on the task over time. Figure out what matters most and give it the most amount of time, and you'll get the most results for everything by doing just that thing. It'll be the lever at all. Well, what that means is you're going to drop that somewhere around noon, 1 o'clock or so, if you're doing it first thing in the day. And now you have that 4 hours for everything else. Right? And then you're going to go home. Whether it be 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever, you're going to go home.
The beauty of time blocking is that you're making an appointment with yourself. We always use our calendars to make appointments with other people. You're making an appointment with yourself to do your most important work. If you just keep that one appointment, your whole world will change.
That's exactly right. Well, the challenge then, Jay, becomes protecting that time block. That's the big challenge, right? And there's 4 kind of proven ways you can do that. The first one is build a bunker, and that is find a place somewhere where you can isolate yourself to focus on that. And that may be alone, it may be with other people. I'm simply pointing out that, let's go to real estate sales. For real estate, the one thing is always lead generation. The business has to have leads. Who controls leads, controls the business, and controls the income. So we know it's the one thing for our business. Now, that means you're going to have to put 3 to 4 hours at a minimum of lead generation every day. When you do that, the first thing you do is you build a bunker. What's the next thing you do?
Well, then you for provisions. Like you find a protected place to work, and then you don't leave it for anything. If you look at your backpack, you can't talk about it. You've got medicine, you've got water, you've got power bars on the table. What happens is you get in the groove, you're really kicking butt, then you have to step out and get a glass of water, and then someone comes running. Oh, I'm so happy I saw you. I've been waiting, and now you got sniped. It's a very complex. You're doing your one thing. Someone jumps in.
Yeah, my backpack is literally my portable bunker provision minesweeper. I mean, when people pick it up, they go, "Oh, that's heavy." And I go, "Yeah, I'm sorry, but the reason is because I have stored all my provisions, everything that I need today, to be highly productive for that period of time. You don't see me running out. You got to use that. You won't see me at all."
And we'll figure that out someday too. So that you find your space, you have provisions, and you don't have to leave it once you keep going. I always say sweep your mind. Turn off your cell phone if you're not using it, right? Turn off Facebook, Twitter. Don't allow things that will immediately distract you in your environment.
And the last one is just as important. Let the people around you understand that for these critical times, this critical time period, you really need to be left alone to do it. I mean, tell your family, tell your kids, tell your dogs. I have 3 dogs. And when I try to do this at home, I figured out a simple solution. I put a what they call a shock little thingy on their collars, and then I put the thing that sets it off about 30 feet from my study.
So they see that and they know not to come near you.
You know what my wife says? Mary says, "I don't want you with at all times." I know when you're in your study, particularly because we have one of our 3 dogs, Gray, that is adopted me as the numero, lead dog in the pack, and she sits at that spot for 4 hours.
Right, just waiting for you to come out.
Waiting for me to come out. And she knows she can't go in, and she knows where I am, and so she'll keep an eye on me. And she says, "I know you're in there doing that." I know you're in there. I know you're in there because Grace is there. But that's how I protect them. I mean, it's as simple as that. Otherwise, the dog is just all over the place. Yeah. Well, there's a fun story about this. You want to tell a story?
Well, yeah, it's a simple way to kind of build momentum around this. Someone once approached Seinfeld, Jerry Seinfeld, at an open mic event when he still did those, and asked him, how do I become a great comedian? Unsurprising to people who study this, he said, well, I want you to write jokes every day, right? It's a habit, you do it every single day. And what's better is he said, here's how you do it. Go buy a big calendar, one of those sets every day of the year, and every day that you write a joke, I want you to put a red X on there. And the beauty of it is that over time, instead of it being about writing a joke, it's about don't break the chain. Build momentum. People love a good streak, so start your own.
Yeah, and you can do that with exercise, you can do it with nutrition, you can do it with lead generation. Anywhere in your life, right? It could be spiritual, come up with that one thing and create a calendar for that. It's whatever. By the way, the trick is don't try to do all of them in one. Take the thing that matters most and build that habit in your life, and then go from there.
We actually built an app on the onething.com. It's a free app, and people can do this. And by far, people are choosing spiritual and physical habits first. and they're doing it, and they're lining up their numbers.
Put the man together, we'll fall into place. It sounds like we're going slow with that first. The reality is that it actually things go faster to do that. Well, the last thing we're going to cover is 4 things. So when you go to do this, it's called setting an appointment with yourself to do the one thing that matters most and take your career to the next level. You're going to have to see that show up in the middle when I try to stop you. The first one is your inability to say no. In other words, what I find is I say no all day long, Jay. It's crazy. I say no on email. I say no to voicemail. I say no to people calling me. I say no to people walking in. It's no, 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 no. And the reason is because I've already set my schedule. You already know what I'm going to be doing 3 to 4 hours a day when I'm in my work mode, because I'm doing that and I'm not going to let you in. It's only going to leave me 3 to 5 hours a day at the most to deal with everything else. Well, I have a big life, and I wasn't sitting around waiting for you to knock on my door or send me an email and ask me a question necessarily. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to ask the question when I get to that. Does it trump my other list? Never trumps my time clock. Never trumps that.
I think the challenge people have with saying no, Gary, is one, we're in the service industry. I don't think they're clear about what they're saying yes to and why it's important to them. And like when you said yes to Mary, when I said yes to my wife, we were very clear we were saying no to everyone else. And I think most people get there are some yeses that are different than others. So when you figure out what's actually your one thing, say yes to it that way, and then it's a little easier.
Yeah, I've met men who haven't said yes to a lot.
Yeah.
It looks very different. Yeah. Well, what's fun is this next graphic about Stephen Jobs, and that was, he even said himself in a famous quote that he was a no-man.
Right. In 1997, when he came back from exile, right, they hired him. He came back. They had over 350 products. They had scanners. They had printers with the Apple logo. He said no so many times in a 2-year period that I'm done, including everything that was in R&D. They only had 10 products left. And that, by the way, was the start of iTunes, iPods, iPhones, everything. That's when they launched.
Yeah, the truth is you're going to be a no-man.
Yep.
You know, and you're going to live in no man's land. If you're going to have an extraordinary life, because you're going to have to narrow down what you say yes to. And then you have to yes by saying no a lot. Well, one of the ways that you do that, we talk about in the book, is you can leverage yourself, right? So that instead of having to say no, it's kind of a false no. I discovered working with lots of people that through training, through having video, audio, and things like that instead of saying no, I can pre-assume I'm going to be asked certain things, and I can say, well, that's over here. You can find that there. You can get this here. And that way I can lead a very big life, and I don't have to say no, I can just say no.
Have you watched my YouTube video on how to do a home inspection? Have you watched or read my blog about how to go closing prepared? Well, let me know if you have any questions.
I do this all the time. One of the things I do is when I read a good book, as you know, I can really go by. I really thought it had the models and answers to a lot of things people ask, and I'll go by 10 or 20 of them. I've got 3 of these right now down there. I'm down to about 10 in each of the stacks. I need to order more. But just yesterday, I had a meeting that lasted a long time. And in the meeting, I went over. The guy asked me a question, and I just picked up one of those books, and I said, "This is how you do this. This is what you do. I want you to read this book, and then I want you to come back and tell me what you think."
Right. You're not saying no. You're saying yes later on your time.
That's exactly right. Well, the second one is the fear of chaos. But the big thief after the inability to say no is the inability to allow things to be untidy, allow there to be disarray, disorder. When you're doing your thing that matters, everything around you is going to be a little messy.
This is the one that I've done and does me. I'm not as people-oriented as a lot of people. I'm task-oriented. So I see the stuff that isn't being done well, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And when you're in your time slot, we compared it to the book as kind of being irreversible. And the longer you're there, the more pressure you feel from every other area in your life to stop doing it and attend to those things. You just got to trust your answer, right? Why you went in there in the first place?
Well, my son, who definitely is much smart aleck as I am one day, as he saw me managing things, he said, "Let me just tell you something, Dad." He said, "When you die," he said, "we're shaving your mustache. So if you think that you're going to go to your grave with a mustache, you're wrong. He said, number two, he said, you're not going to be wearing black. He said, so just so you know. And you know what? It was a great reminder to me again that the idea of tidiness, the idea of everything lined up, ducks in the road, in the sense of everything is all perfect is an illusion. And what you're trying to do is manage what matters most, and then do the best you can on everything else. That's the big idea behind that. Well, the third one, which is why I'm really doing spiritual and physical up there first, is for health habits. You don't have the energy. You don't have the stamina. You don't have the ability to. I have people all the time ask me, what happens next for you, in terms of, what happens when something happens. I say, well, short of dying, nothing. I mean, I'm 56, but God, I'm in great health. I take care of myself. Unless something unavoidable happens, I'm good. I have as much energy, as much bounce in my step, as much drive as I did when I was in my 20s. Nothing's changed because I made health a priority in the foundation of peace.
Well, my observation is it really matters if you're going for average. But if you're actually trying to do something extraordinary, these all matter to you. Energy matters a lot if you're trying to be productive all day.
Well, what I've noticed is that if you could distill all of this down, and we'll end on this note, if you could distill all of this down to just this, Jay, we would give people this advice. We would say, get up in the morning and tap into your spiritual energy, however you want to do it. But figure out what matters most and make that the one thing you do first off. Secondly, get up from there and go and exercise. Eat right, exercise, right? And then, of course, on the flip side, make sure you go to bed in time to get a full night's sleep, right? So that you're plugged in and recharged the battery. The third thing is find the people you care about, right? Talk to my mom this morning. Talk to my son late last night. Texted him this morning. He says, why do you text me all the time? I said, because I don't know when my last day is. And I want you every day to know that I think about you. I'm not bugging you. I don't need a response, bye. I'm not pursuing you. I'm simply communicating with you because you matter to me. And I don't want to go a day without you knowing that because someday it'll be the last day. And I want to look back and go, oh, wow, I hadn't talked to him in a week or a month. And I don't want that to ever happen. The one thing I can do, son, to make sure that never happens is to communicate with you some way every day. So that's just the way it's going to be. Live with it, right? And then, by the way, figure out what you need to do. Make sure you have goals. Make sure you have a plan. Calendar that such that you can live number 5, which is a time block for your one thing. And that's the critical concept here. Then get into work and make sure you have a great day by noon. The secret I discovered from my own life, and I observed it over and over again, is that the most extraordinary people have perfect days. What they have is they have a great day for a handful of hours when it matters most. At the beginning of the day. At the beginning of the day. Now, you can renew energy, and we know this. But the problem is that the afternoon window life catches up with you. So depending upon the way your life is organized, unless you're a rare bird, it's going to be tough to do that.
You have the most control over your life in the morning. It's just a fact.
It is. Well, we're done. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for your time, Jay, and thanks for giving us this opportunity today to share this.
Thank you, Gary and Jay. That was fantastic. Mel, we can skip a few slides, and we're going to have an answer and, a question and answer session now. And I have a question from Sam. These models become difficult to implement if not working with a team. Gary or Jay, would you like to answer that?
That's a long shot.
No, I think they do.
Sorry, but don't buy into that. That's a myth because I would look up and say, excuse me, when I started out, it was just Gary Keller. I didn't have a team.
Right. If you do this, you'll earn the right to have a team.
Well, remember, let's go back to the thieves. One of them was chaos.
Right.
When you say, I can't do this without a team, what you're saying is, essentially, or at least my interpretation, because I have people say this to me all the time, and I say, well, really it's because you see that paperclip and you can pick it up. You see that thing over there, you need to do it. I give you a good example of this. I see an agent running down the door at 10 o'clock to a closing. You say, why are you going at 10? You should be lead generating. Well, well, this is the only time everyone could do it. I said, excuse me, is that really true? By the way, Jay, that's only true 1 out of 100.
Right. And if you had time blocked the time, you'd say, I'm sorry, I already have another appointment at that time. We have to find another one.
Yeah, and I have a policy that I always in closing protect. I close in the afternoon, so we'll leave a tick in the afternoon that works. Right. Sorry to be blunt.
No problem, that was great. We've got a question from Jillian. When discussing options with my client, what is the one thing I should tell my buyer to focus on when purchasing a home?
What do you need versus what you want? The one thing that distracts helping a buyer is they haven't, there was a sheet of paper that was a Bible for me back early when I first started real estate, and I pulled it out with a line down the middle and said wants versus needs. And when I tried to get the person, the buyer, couple or a single person to understand it, there's a huge difference between what you want and what you need. What we want to do is find a home that you need with as many of your wants as possible.
Okay, thank you, Gary. We have to wrap it up with you guys, but thank you so much for being on. It's personally inspiring, and I know everyone is loving it. Thank you so much. But don't leave us, everybody. We have Joe Sesso, and he is coming on to... Mel, want to say something?
I've got 2 books to give away still.
Oh, right at the end of Joe Sesso. So hang in there. We have 2 more signed copies of the One Thing to Give Away. But, Joe, are you there? He's almost here.